not going back to where we were before. There are going to be impacts.
Right. Understood. Mike Egginton, I think you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, John. Ray, great presentation. I wanted to add, you and I have been working this issue also legislatively. I know I wanted to bring up the bill where it allowed virtual shareholders to vote as opposed to physically, coming to meetings. And I know in my own shop and probably yours, we've been doing hybrid, keeping people off the road and being able to conduct meetings that way. So you're starting to even see the legislature start to think about like how do we go forward and lessons learned. So really appreciate your broad perspective that you brought here today from the experience and JBI, both on the regulatory side, what you and I do, in the legislative side. So wanted to thank you for that, and appreciate your ideas and feedback here at the council. Is important. Thanks.
And Mike, well, one thing I think we all agree on, we don't want the legislature to do their work remotely. We want them in the building. But
Yeah.
again, I think we're all finding, you mentioned board meetings, et cetera. I think we're all finding that there are things that can work very well productively. And I was just reading another article and doing the research for this, and I think we can all think back to this, and I'll use my government experience. What we thought was productive work of being in meetings, which we didn't think we really needed to be there. Well, maybe we really didn't need to be there. So not having to travel sometimes to those things make people prioritize what is productive work and what we really need to get done. So I think it's a behavioral change, it's a recognition change, and again, it's going to be permanent and continue to evolve.
Yep, agreed. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah, I think you may have not been here at the beginning, but my comment to the commissioner was I think the department functions a lot better with the allowance of remote meetings, because trying to schedule 12 people in a meeting typically was a month-long process given everyone's different schedules. It's much easier when it's remote.
And people traveling from all parts of the state, all coming down.
Yep.
The time for that, the time to log in downstairs, what we could wrap up in a half hour used to take us 3 hours to accomplish.
Right, absolutely. Any other members of the council want to ask a question of Ray? I am very curious as we go forward on data about those big meetings out of state. I remember hearing about a lot of people going to like Charlotte, North Carolina, people flying from 10 different locations for a 2-hour meeting. I'm assuming those days are going to be over pretty soon. At least 3 months.
And I'm not sure if I threw this stat out, I may have skipped it, because I talked longer than I thought I did. But the anticipation is, from a business travel perspective, the anticipate that 40% of business travel will never return. So,
Yeah.
And that's a lot of those out-of-state type of meetings, or even those sales meetings that can be done.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions from the council? Otherwise, Ray, thank you as always. Appreciate your presentation.
I thank you, and I look forward to reading your report.
Absolutely. Our final presentation for the day is from Matthew U. Watkins, a retired administrator and former director of local government services in New Jersey. Matt Watkins is a career professional municipal manager serving in that position for over 40 years in 3 different states, but primarily in New Jersey. He has served in 7 different communities ranging from urban to suburban municipalities. As I mentioned, Mr. Watkins also served at the State of New Jersey Director of Local Government Services and Commissioner on Public Employment Relations Commission. In 2019, Matt served as the president for the New Jersey Municipal Managers Association. That is recognized for his expertise in organizational skills, work with community leaders, and in labor relations. In 2021, New Jersey Community Solutions LLC was formed to assist private companies in working with New Jersey local and county governments. Additionally, NJCS assists local governments with community operations, labor management, and redevelopment. Matt, the floor is yours. You are on mute. That's okay.
I knew I would forget that part.
It's our first one, though. Last one, first one, right? Very good. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate the introduction and being most of all, and most importantly, being part of this session. It's interesting to. Unfortunately, I am busy with some other things. I didn't get to sign on until recently, but listening to Ray Cantor was very, very exciting, and I wish I could have been in on the entire conference, but unfortunately I could not. So I want to talk about just the impact to local government in New Jersey, and three primary areas that I see that is important. I think is one is the employees themselves, municipal government employees, and how they're interacting with the whole changing culture since the COVID, and the services that are demanded of local government now that there are people still very reluctant to come to City Hall. And then some of the financial impact to municipal government as a unintended consequence of the change, much of what Ray was talking about with, and I'm sure that was covered in this seminar, in the changing of travel habits. First of all, with employees, municipal employees, the demand for professionals or people at the certified positions, such as the municipal managers, clerks, finance officers, tax collectors, those positions that are professional positions that you have certifications and things like that. It's really hard to find employees. Even before the pandemic, it was getting harder and harder to find those employees. And now the younger employees that want to come into the profession are of the mind, much of Ray, I caught that the younger generation, they just don't want to come in. They want the remote work. So while we were already going through a shortage, now that shortage becomes even more acute, in that we just don't have people wanting to do these jobs. And those that actually do now are reluctant because they can't work remote. But aside from that, those that are working in this job, they got their chance to work from home. Many of them, myself included at the time, I'd be exhausted at the end of the day, even though I didn't have to travel anywhere. I didn't have to commute. I didn't have to see anybody face to face. I was exhausted because I could do so much more in a given day. And so there are employees that do want the change. They know that they can work remote. Employers know that they are working remote, but the change in the culture, the cultural shift, certainly at the local level, is so significant and so counter to that desire to work remote. People want to come to City Hall. Some people want to come to City Hall, and they want to see that there's not a sign out front, City Hall's closed, or this employee's not here. I often think back of the futuristic movies that, where you walk up to a city clerk's office and you talk to a TV screen. The public just isn't ready for that. I don't see it, certainly in my experience. So I think there's a resistance to that desire to have remote public employees when they come to City Hall. Obviously, you can't have remote work for police. You can't have it for fire. You can't have it for people that have to be that are servicing recreation, etc. Those people can't be remote for obvious reasons. So there is the resistance to that change and the practical fact that you just can't make that difference. But then there are people, the people in the financial end of local government, people in that review plans and permits. Those are possible to be remote, but there's still just a resistance to that. And you see this actually, and I jump around here for a minute. Elected officials, you have a lot of local governments that council and boards are still meeting remotely. A lot of resistance, a lot of complaints, but you get a lot more participation. Recently, I was in a meeting, public meeting, and the council, the demand from the public was, look, we want to have these remote meetings, we want hybrid meetings, and so that public can participate in a hybrid meeting. And that has its own set of circumstances and difficulties I see. So there's even a reluctance or a difficulty just returning back to normal for elected officials. People want to see their elected officials, but to conduct the business of the local government, many towns are still meeting remotely. And for the most part, it's still effective. And so they see that effective work, and there's a resistance to go back. So we see that at all levels. You see it at the employee level, you see it at even the elected official level. But how do we, as running local governments, try to navigate this water that's changing so quickly? And here in New Jersey especially, we don't make changes very easily. And there's that how to treat public employees who can work remote, who are demanding to work remote, but then it's viewed that it's inconsistent, that if you let me work remote because I can, while Jim here, who hands out permits to the public, he can't work remote. So Jim and I have a difference in how do you become consistent and how do you deal with that issue? And I think what's important for this audience to understand is that there has been some guidance that has been provided by the state, and it just came out less than a week ago, maybe 2 weeks, I guess, where the Civil Service Commission, which not all towns are civil service, but we look to the Civil Service, New Jersey Civil Service Commission, to set certain standards by which many towns operate, even if you're not civil service. But they developed a pilot program that calls for remote working and how that is to be accomplished. And I think that is a brilliant step. I applaud Governor Murphy and Chairperson Cobb for her, efforts to provide at least some guidance, even though this is a pilot program. It's for state employees, state executive employees, to come up with a plan, but it gives us, as municipal officials, it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, here's some guidelines that, while it doesn't really affect us, but they still become guidelines for us and models for us to emulate should we want to provide that remote work option for certain employees. And that is going to be the very, very tricky part of changing environment to provide for hybrid working, if that's what ultimately we go to. The tricky part is to be consistent. In public employment in New Jersey, consistency is always the key element that has to be in any kind of public policy for employees. You have to be consistent. You can't treat one group or against the other, and you have to have a complete and detailed plan on how that is achieved. In order to do that, we're going to have cooperation from our unions. They are, most towns in New Jersey have unions to some varying degree of level. Sometimes it's throughout the entire organization, all the way up to supervisory staff, to those towns that have no unions because they're very small. So we look at how that is going to be handled. And I think that at least we have some guidelines now for towns to follow, or at least look at when they start to develop that plan. But what I stress to my colleagues, other local officials, you have to work with our labor unions, make sure that you involve them, and they will have their own conflict because they may have a membership, a union membership, that some of those members can work remote while some of them cannot, just by the functions of that job. So they may even have divisions within their own union. And all of us have to get used to that, and all of us have to work through that. I do not think that will be accomplished, certainly won't be accomplished easily, and I don't think it will be accomplished quickly. Time is running out for us, and because the demands are there. So I think that we're going to have to achieve some level of understanding and agreement between us as management of our local government and those employees that work for us. Service demands now on local government are it's changing. People don't want to come to the municipal building. They want to be able to file for permits. They want to be able to pay their taxes and do that all online. Well, in New Jersey, that's a difficult process because there are fees to do online services, and how to charge that, how to handle that. We're still working. Some of us have worked that out. Not all towns have worked that. There's 565 towns. Most of those towns in New Jersey are 10 or 15,000 population or less. So it's not a big organization. For them to get technically upscaled so that they can handle permits and do pay taxes online, that's a challenge for them. And that's going to take a long time to work itself through. Not unattainable, certainly, because there are towns that do that, but it's going to be a heavy lift, and it's expensive for these towns that are still running off Windows 7 when we're into Windows 11 already. That one small tiny example of just the technological gap that can exist even within medium-sized towns. So we struggle with the services, the impact of of advancing our technology so that we can provide those services online. And yet you still have, for me, I say my generation, who still likes to come in with that paper check. We like to come down and see that stamp, stamp my taxes paid. I want that. And I'm not giving you paper. I'm not doing this online. I don't even know how to do the computer. Those issues are real and advanced. And at the same time, you have like my sons and daughters that they don't even carry a dollar bill in their pocket. Shocking to me when it happened, when I first realized that. That's their generation. They do everything online. So they don't want to come down to City Hall. What do you mean I got to come to City Hall to pay my taxes? Can't you just link me up and let me do it that way? And you can't. So we have a lot of challenges to local governments in New Jersey, primarily because a lot of them are small, and the technological, to advance their technological capability is an expense that they're just not ready to do and have that available to the public. Then you come into the issue of the financial impact of what's the changing environment that's going on. And I'll speak primarily to two issues, and that is those towns that are fortunate to have train stations or bus station, mostly train stations in their town. A lot of us, and where I retired as an administrator from Bloomfield Township, we have, parking garage that, the town owns and operates. We depend on that revenue. We have debt as a result of that parking garage. And We don't have a full parking garage. People aren't going into the city anymore. People aren't taking the train. I'm sure that I know Kevin Corbett was on earlier. I'm sure that he brought that up, that the capacity of the trains there's plenty of room now. Well, it impacts us, our ability to pay the debt on the construction of these parking garages, which are not inexpensive. That's a big concern for governments that have transportation hubs within their boundaries, and they have built to that. Secondly, and actually, Ray Cantor mentioned this, was the vacancies in buildings. We have been for the last 2-3 years being slammed by tax appeals, where you have built office buildings that are vacant. They appeal those taxes, they get their reduction. Well, that's our tax money. That's what we based a budget off of, and now we've got to pay that money back to them on an appeal that can be. I had a tax appeal. This was years ago, but same impact. It was a large office complex that had changed, that had a high vacancy rate. This town I was working in at that time had to pay $750,000 back to that town or back to that business, because the taxes were appraised too high. So there are substantial impacts to the finances of the local government, and it's something that we're very, very concerned about, all of us that have those larger towns that have buildings built recently and the high vacancy rate. So I'll leave it at that. My time is pretty much up. I thank you all for allowing me to be on this meeting. I thank the New Jersey League of Municipalities for having me speak on their behalf. And I hope to stay around for a little bit of time. If there's are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation. Members of the council, any questions for Matt?
John, if I could, real quick.
Sure.
Michael. Matt, great presentation. The League of Municipalities is my next door neighbor in Trenton at the State Chamber. And the one interesting thing that we both share, and John Valeri and others on the council know this, we're probably the two premier organizations in the state that put huge events together every year. The League Conference in Atlantic City and our, Walk to Washington train trip, which we had to put on hold the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and last year because of the Omicron rise. So the challenges, even for our organizations, exist going forward. I know Mike Serra, the current president of the league, did a good job of bringing the league conference back last November. But again, interesting how, everything is being modified, to, leaving mask wearing. We have a 2-day business summit this week. We're letting people know, although we're not asking for proof of vaccination, there's, you can voluntarily wear masks if you want to. So even just that changing landscape, events and stuff, as I heard you talking, I had to share with you. So, but thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here, and best luck to all of you. I applaud you for this seminar. I think it's wonderful. I hope everybody, you post that up so we get to watch it, those of us that couldn't watch the beginning. I'm sure that there was a lot of very good information, and I encourage everybody to listen to it, and I will do that with my colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions for Matt? Otherwise, okay. Matt was our last scheduled speaker. So we will start in our general public's comments. Again, as we mentioned previously, each speaker has 3 minutes to comment. We'll give you a warning. I think we said a minute left in your time. We're going to start with 2 pre-registered speakers or pre-registered commenters. The first one is Keith Voos from the New Jersey State Conference of NAACP. Keith, are you on? Keith Voos. Give him a minute. And we can certainly come back to check because we have go ahead.
John,
Mike.
I'm looking at the attendees alphabetically. I don't see him logged in as of yet. So
Okay.
just
Then
FYI.
then we'll go to the next registered speaker or presenter, which is Doug O'Malley from Environment New Jersey. Doug, are you on?
I don't see Doug on either, John. Yeah, I'm looking just
No.
again, who's logged on.
If there's anyone else that's here to make a presentation again for 3 minutes, you can raise your hand in the chat room will probably be the best way. Or a note in the chat. Yeah, I'm one of those who's not good at technology.
Well, John, you might want to note too that the written comment period is still open to, individuals to provide.
Yeah, I don't have the slide in front of me, Mike. Maybe you can just reiterate the.
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick here. Yep. Okay. So this is as you noted, Chairman, this is the time period for the public comments. But just to let other attendees and the public know that, written comments are always welcomed. And we have until May the 1st to submit those comments. And again, you can do one of two ways. You can email our Clean Air Council liaison, Heidi Jones. Her email is Heidi, HEIDI.Jones, JONES, @dep.nj.gov, or simply mail it to the New Jersey Clean Air Council, and it's mail code 401-02, 401 East State Street, second floor, P.O. Box 420, Trenton, New Jersey, 08625.
Okay, very good. And that's on our website as well. I do have someone with their hand raised, Robert Rashkis. Can you identify yourself? And if you want to speak, you have 3 minutes. You may need to unmute yourself. Mr. Rashkis.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Now you faded out.
Okay. I can't hear you, but if you can hear me, I'll do my presentation.
I can hear you now. You can begin.
My name is Robert Rashkis. I live in West Orange, New Jersey. And one thing I wanted to bring to your attention that during the pandemic, I have seen increases in recreational wood burning in residential neighborhoods as residents stayed home during the pandemic. Many have the perception that wood burning in residential fire pits and fireplaces is safe, harmless, and fun. This has led to increases in the installation of wood burning fire pits and the use of fireplaces in the midst of residential neighborhoods such as mine. There have been recent studies conducted that show that residential wood burning is very toxic to health and the environment. Young children, the elderly, and the chronically ill are particularly at risk from the effects of wood smoke emanating from these fires, which generate carbon dioxide emissions. The website www.familiesforcleanair.org provides the following information about the negative impact of wood smoke. Scientists have identified wood smoke as a major contributor to global warming. A single fireplace creates more air pollution than 90 SUVs. Wood smoke contains toxic compounds that include benzene, toluene, and dioxin. The cancer risk from wood smoke is 12 times greater than from cigarette smoke. Children exposed to wood smoke have more colds, ear infections, and asthma attacks. Recent studies link wood smoke to heart attacks, strokes, and premature death. And so in addition to familiesforcleanair.org, You can get more information at www.woodsmokepollution.org. And I believe that recreational wood burning should be regulated, and we should be encouraging the use of clean fuels. And I've installed a purple air detector at my house that can monitor the fine particulate matter that is given off by
50
the wood
seconds
smoke,
left.
and I'm able to compare it with other purple air detectors in the state. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reshkus. Anyone else who wants to make a comment, public comment, before I ask for Mr. Voos or Mr. O'Malley? You're on mute, Mike.
Chairman, I just wanted to let you know, I looked at the attendee list again, and those two individuals are still not on.
Okay, so we have no other commenters. I'm kind of thinking we should email them and just tell them that, first, of course, if they want to submit written comments, are more than welcome. That's the end of our public hearing today. I, as chairman, would like to thank all of our speakers who came today. Let's push stop on that. It's been a very interesting topic. I think this is going to be the first of several times we analyze this, maybe not even as a Clean Air Council, but going forward. And certainly we'll take all of your data and your comments into heart as we prepare our report for the commissioner for recommendations on going forward. Certainly, again, as Mike Egginton mentioned, if you have not spoken and would wish to submit comments, please do so. Chairman Alan Weston, I don't know if there's anything you want to mention before we close out.
No, John, I really just wanted to thank you. Once again, you did a fantastic job with this. We recovered from a couple early tech hiccups, and I thought you did a great job as always. And Mike, thanks for helping him out and helping secure a lot of these speakers. So thank you to all the speakers and all the participants. And I'll turn it back to you, hearing chair, to get a motion to adjourn.
Okay, before we make a motion, I have to acknowledge Heidi Jones, who keeps us all straight and narrow, keeping us all organized. Didn't get to recognize her at the beginning, so thank you. Without her, this thing collapses. Motion, yeah, I like the clapping hands, very good. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
He waited all day to do that.
All right, everyone, thank you for all the attendees. Thank you for attending, and hopefully next year we'll be probably still hybrid, but hopefully a lot more people live. So thank you.
Good hearing,
Thanks,
John and Mike. Thank you.
Take care,
Thank you.
Council. Take care,
Everybody.
Yep.
Yes.